Let me tell you something everyone has been lying to you about since you were a child. They sit you down and they tell you to follow your passion. They say that if you just find what makes you happy, success will naturally follow and you will never work a hard day in your life. That is a lie designed to keep you weak. Passion is merely a feeling. And feelings are the most fickle things on earth. Feelings change with the weather, with your mood, with how much sleep you manage to get the night before. If you rely on passion to build your empire, you are building a massive house on loose sand. When the storm comes, and trust me, the storm is always coming, that passion will wash away in an instant. Real men, successful men, they do not build their lives on fleeting passions. They build on solid purpose. They build on unwavering duty. They build on the silent, unglamorous daily habits that absolutely nobody else wants to do. You think it is about being loud, about showing off your daily hustle on the internet, about making sure everyone knows exactly how hard you are working. It is not. The most dangerous men in any room are always the quiet ones, the ones who are executing in complete silence. Ask yourself honestly right now, when was the last time you sat in complete silence and evaluated your life without making a single excuse? Most men cannot do it. They cannot face the mirror. They distract themselves with constant noise, with endless scrolling, with cheap digital entertainment, because the silence in their own head is far too loud. The silence forces you to confront the massive gap between who you actually are and who you constantly claim you want to be. I know you are deeply tired of waiting for your moment. I know it feels like nothing is happening despite your supposed efforts. But trust me on this. You are not waiting on the world to give you a chance. The world is waiting on you to stop playing a ridiculously small game. This is what separates the 1% from the 99%. The 99% desperately want the massive reward without ever making the painful sacrifice. They want the prestigious title without the grueling training. They want the bright spotlight, but they absolutely refuse to sit in the dark and do the invisible work. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is going to hand you a treasure map. You have to carve the path yourself in the pitch black when nobody is clapping for you. Let us talk about what actually happens behind the heavy curtain of massive success. I call it the iceberg principle, and you deeply need to understand it if you want to survive the coming years. Everybody loves to look at the massive peak of the iceberg shining brightly in the afternoon sun. They see the money, the deep respect, the forged physique, the unshakable inner confidence. They point at that man and say he just got incredibly lucky. What they do not see, what they intentionally refuse to acknowledge, is the massive, jagged mountain of ice hidden deep beneath the freezing dark water. That underwater mass is years of absolute unbroken isolation. It is the early mornings when the bed was incredibly warm and the floor was freezing cold. It is the countless agonizing times you wanted to quit, but you forced yourself to take one more painful step anyway. Society aggressively conditions you to crave immediate visibility and instant validation. But the strong foundation of any towering skyscraper is dug deep into the filthy dirt, entirely out of sight, long before anyone ever sees a building rising into the skyline. You are in the music dirt right now. You are digging that foundation. And let me tell you, it is terribly lonely down there. It is dirty. It is exhausting, but it is entirely necessary. Stop worrying about who sees your progress and start obsessing over the depth of your roots. Now, pay music. close attention to this, because this is exactly where most average men break and surrender. The invisible work is not just about physical effort. It is a brutal, ongoing test of mental fortitude. Imagine a master blacksmith forging a legendary sword in ancient times. He does not gently tap the metal and hope for the best. He thrusts it deep into the blazing fire until it is glowing white hot, and then he brings a heavy, unforgiving hammer down on it, over and over and over again. Then he rapidly plunges it into freezing water. The metal literally screams. It goes through extreme heat, brutal blunt force, and shocking cold. That is the only possible way to create hardened steel that will not shatter into pieces in the middle of a chaotic battle. You are that raw piece of metal. The unforgiving world is the hammer. The daily challenges you face, the painful setbacks, the quiet frustrations that keep you awake at night, they are the blazing fire. If you constantly avoid the fire, if you expertly dodge the hammer, you remain soft iron. You might be mildly useful for making horseshoes, but you are utterly useless in a real music war. And life, my friend, is a relentless war for your true potential. While they sleep, you grind. While they constantly complain about the heat, you step willingly into the forge. You must embrace the pounding. Here is where it gets incredibly interesting. So listen to me carefully. People love to talk about opportunity as if it is a magical lottery ticket floating in a wind. They pray daily for a lucky break. They sit around their comfortable living rooms, waiting for the universe to perfectly align and drop a golden opportunity right into their lazy laps. Let me give you a harsh truth that will save you a wasted decade of waiting. Opportunity does not owe you a single music thing. And when opportunity finally does knock loudly on your front door, it does not wait around for you to get dressed and properly ready. If you are not completely prepared in that exact second, it moves on to the next door without a single second thought. Not success, but preparation for success. That is the only thing you actually control in this chaotic world. There is a fundamental law of readiness that dictates the ultimate trajectory of your entire life. You cannot control when the heavy iron door of opportunity will finally swing open, but you entirely control exactly who you are standing there when it does. Are you the man who has been quietly sharpening his lethal skills in the shadows for years? Or are you the amateur who has to desperately scramble, hoping to fake it until he makes it? The real game always exposes the frauds. When the bright lights come on, you cannot hide a lack of preparation. Think deeply about the ancient gladiator stepping out into the roaring Colosseum. The massive crowd is screaming for blood. The sand is burning hot under his feet. The heavy iron gates slam open. That terrifying, violent fight does not determine if he is a true warrior. The fight merely reveals the warrior he meticulously built in the dark, damp dungeons years prior. If he skipped his rigorous training, if he compromised on his strict discipline when absolutely nobody was watching, the unforgiving arena will expose him in a matter of seconds. Your daily life has its own brutal arenas. It might be a high-stakes corporate boardroom. It might be a sudden, terrifying medical crisis in your family. It might be a devastating financial collapse out of nowhere. In that exact chaotic moment of crisis, you do not magically rise to the level of your highest, most noble hopes. You fall instantly to the level of your baseline daily preparation. I deeply need you to understand this concept. Every single difficult book you force yourself to read, every single extra hour you put in at the desk, Every time you choose hard discipline over cheap pleasure, you are actively storing up heavy ammunition for a battle you do not even know is coming yet. You are not sacrificing your present. You are actively securing your future. Stop whatever you are doing and think about this for a moment. Heavy pressure does not magically change your core character. It simply introduces you to your true unfiltered self. It violently strips away the fake masks, the smooth rehearsed talk, the carefully curated image you constantly project to the world on your glowing screen. Let me tell you a powerful story about a man who worked grueling night shifts, loading heavy boxes into trucks for 5 straight years. He had a young, hungry family to feed, a massive business idea, burning a hole in his head, and absolutely zero free time to himself. Everyone around him confidently told him he was crazy, that he should just settle for the reliable weekly paycheck and drink cheap beer on the weekends like a normal, average person. But he had a silent, unbreakable habit that saved his life. Every single night during his strict 30 in a lunch break, he sat alone in the freezing cab of his truck under a dim yellow light and intensely studied. He built his complex business plan from scratch. He learned corporate accounting. He taught himself advanced digital marketing. He didn't tell a single soul. He didn't post a single picture about his daily grind. He just did the bloody warmth. When his entire industry suddenly collapsed and he lost that secure warehouse job, the pressure was immense. Other weak men panicked and completely broke down, but he just calmly activated the master plan he had been building in the dark. Now aggressively contrast that disciplined warrior with another extremely common archetype you see every single day. The man who relies entirely on his natural God-given talent, the guy who always had it incredibly easy, who never had to study for a difficult test, who skated through early life on superficial charm and absolute minimal physicity effort. Over time, he naturally builds a deeply dangerous pattern of constant evasion. He carefully learns how to do just enough to get by without ever actually pushing his physical or mental limits. Then real life inevitably throws him a devastating curveball. A genuine, terrifying crisis hits his comfortable, sheltered world. His health suddenly fails. His long-term marriage crumbles to pieces. Or a hungry young competitor completely destroys his comfortable market share. Suddenly, his smooth, practiced charm music is entirely useless. His natural talent isn't remotely enough to solve a complex, grueling, multi-layered problem. What exactly happens to him? He completely crumbles under the immense weight. He immediately looks for a convenient scapegoat to blame, because when the heavy pressure squeezed him tightly, it squeezed out exactly what was stored inside his soul: toxic entitlement and a profound, shocking lack of inner resilience. Do you know what that means for you today? It means every minor inconvenience you face right now is a vital test of your own hidden patterns. We must now deeply discuss the modern psychological battlefield that is actively destroying an entire generation of capable men. Your daily attention, your undivided laser-like focus, is the most valuable currency you will ever possess in this lifetime. It is infinitely more valuable than your bank account. You can lose $1 million in a terrible business deal and grind to make it all back next year. But you absolutely cannot buy back a single wasted hour of your limited life. We currently live in a predatory digital world designed specifically to steal your daily focus. Every single social application, every flash and Greg notification, Every breaking news story is engineered by brilliant psychologists to hijack your brain chemistry and keep you endlessly addicted. You must fiercely protect your daily attention like it is literal gold, because it is. You desperately need to build an impenetrable focus fortress around your mind. There are 3 massive energy vampires trying to aggressively breach your castle walls right now. The first is toxic, small-minded people. The constant daily complainers, the perpetual victims, the ones who drain your high ambition just by breathing the air in the same room. You absolutely cannot soar with eagles if you insist on hanging out with turkeys. Cut them loose without a single apology. Be ruthlessly selective with your inner circle. The second deadly energy vampire is the infinite mind-numbing scroll of modern social media. Listen to me carefully, because this specific habit is actively killing your true potential. You are sitting there passively watching other disciplined men live their wildest dreams, watching other men build their impressive bodies, watching other men create massive generational wealth, while your own precious life is rapidly passing you by in the blink of an eye. You are willingly trading your actual physical reality for a cheap, manipulated digital illusion. Every single minute you spend consuming someone else's carefully curated highlight reel is a minute you permanently steal from building your own masterpiece. You have to aggressively shift your core mindset from a passive consumer to an active, relentless creator. Turn the damn phone off. Put it in a completely different room entirely. Stare at a blank white wall for an hour if you have to. But stop letting corporate algorithms dictate your daily thoughts and emotions. The third vicious vampire is the paralyzing, suffocating fear of other people's opinions. The deep fear of what they will whisper behind your back if you actually start trying to be truly great. What if I told you that the people judging you are almost always doing significantly worse than you in life? Real winners do not have the time to criticize others. They are far too busy executing their own massive plans. When you deeply care about other people's fleeting opinions, you voluntarily make them your master. You willingly hand over the heavy keys to your own life and quietly sit in the passenger seat while they drive you off a cliff. Take the keys back today. Lock the heavy iron gates of your mind against the useless noise of the mediocre crowd. Absolute unbroken focus is the ultimate superpower of this modern decade. It is the one single trait that almost nobody possesses anymore. If you can simply teach yourself to sit in a quiet room for 3 straight hours and work aggressively on a single difficult task, without checking a glowing screen, you will rapidly dominate your lazy competition. They are entirely too distracted to fight back. They are too busy frantically checking their notifications to even notice you passing them by at lightning speed. This requires a level of strict, unapologetic boundary setting that will make you deeply unpopular with average, comfortable people. Let them call you obsessed. Let them loudly call you antisocial. Let them say you have changed for the worse. You are supposed to change. A caterpillar does not apologize to the crawling bugs when it builds a dark cocoon to become a butterfly. It isolates itself completely. It undergoes a brutal, painful transformation in the dark, and it emerges with the incredible ability to fly far above them. You must strictly isolate your focus. Let us break down exactly how you systematically evolve from where you are right now to where you truly belong. It is not mystical magic. It is a cold, calculated mechanical process. I call it the growth sequence, and it features 5 absolute non-negotiable stages that you must master if you want to win. Stage 1 is aggressive learning, but absolutely not the way the traditional outdated school system taught you. I am talking about ruthlessly auditing your daily input quality. What exact information are you intentionally feeding your subconscious mind every single morning? If you constantly consume mental trash, you will inevitably produce a trash life. Read the heavy, difficult books written by the disciplined men who have successfully conquered the steep mountains you are currently trying to climb. Study ancient history, study Stoic philosophy, study brutal military strategy. But absolutely understand this. Learning is completely useless without stage 2, which is rapid, immediate application. This is the 1% daily rule in violent action. Gathering vast amounts of information without strict execution is just a form of sophisticated intellectual procrastination. You learn a powerful new principle and you fiercely apply it to your life immediately. You do not wait for a magical Monday. You do not wait for the 1st of January. You aggressively apply it today. Even if you do it incredibly poorly, action always creates deep clarity, while overthinking only creates deeper, terrifying paralysis. You take one small, highly imperfect step, and you force yourself to improve by 1 tiny % the next day. You see, most average men are completely paralyzed by the dangerous illusion of perfectionism. They desperately want to launch the absolutely perfect business. They want to have the perfectly optimized workout routine before they lift a single heavy weight. Perfection is a dangerous, debilitating myth constantly used by cowards to quietly justify their chronic inaction. Do it messy, but do it right now. That leads us directly into stage 3 of the growth sequence evaluation. The brutal, unforgiving weekly review. You must become a cold, ruthless auditor of your own daily life. At the extremely quiet end of every single week, you sit down completely alone with a pen and a blank piece of paper. No background music, no glowing screams, no outside distractions whatsoever. You look objectively at what you actually did over the last 7 days, and you harshly measure it against what you boldly said you were going to do. Did you hit your daily targets? If you failed, exactly why did you fail? Absolutely zero pathetic excuses are allowed in this quiet room. This painful, intense honesty leads perfectly into stage 4, immediate calculated correction. Stage 4 is the critical necessary ability to strategically pivot versus the weak, overwhelming urge to completely quit. When a massive commercial airplane flies from New York across the dark ocean to London, it is technically off course for roughly 90% of the entire journey. The heavy crosswind blows it slightly left. The internal autopilot quickly corrects it back to the right. It constantly makes microscopic adjustments based entirely on real-time feedback. That is exactly what you must do with your own life trajectory. A temporary painful failure is not an indictment of your permanent worth. It is simply raw, valuable data. It clearly tells you exactly what not to do that next time you try to find that person's work. Correct the damn course and keep moving aggressively forward. And finally, you enter the grueling stage 5, relentless persistence, the undeniable massive compound effect. This is the grinding, agonizing stage where you do the difficult work again and again and again, long past the exact point where it stops being firm, long past the point where the initial burst of exciting motivation has completely faded away into nothing. You persist straight through the absolute boredom until the daily habit literally becomes an inseparable part of your core identity. You cycle through these 5 stages relentlessly, and I promise you will become entirely unrecognizable in exactly 1 year. I constantly hear grown, capable men talk about motivation as if it is some sort of magical required prerequisite for doing hard work. They say weak things like, "I am just not feeling highly motivated today." Or, "I desperately need to watch a high-energy video to get myself hyped up for the gym." Let me tell you a closely guarded secret that the massive self-help industry hates. Relying on daily motivation is absolute garbage. Motivation is nothing more than a sugary, artificial energy drink that gives you a quick, fake spike and then inevitably leaves you crashing hard a few hours later. Motivation relies entirely on how you currently feel, and we have already firmly established that your daily feelings are incredibly unreliable and inherently weak. True discipline, on the other hand, is like plain, clear water. It might not taste particularly exciting. It certainly doesn't give you a sudden chemical rush, but you absolutely need it to survive and function at a high level. Elite, rigid systems beat temporary, fleeting moods every single time they clash. Not motivation, but cold, hard discipline. Not what you occasionally do once in a while when you feel fantastic, but what you force yourself to do daily when you feel absolutely music terrible. You deeply need a personal system that completely removes the weak element of choice from the equation entirely. When you wake up and actually music have to mentally debate whether or not to go to the gym, you have already lost the bloody battle. The internal exhausting debate in your head consumes the exact mental energy you desperately need for the actual physical music workout. You need established, ironclad, non-negotiables in your life, specific things you do every single day. Regardless of the terrible weather outside, regardless of the painfully low number in your bank music account, regardless of the frustrating argument you just had with your boss, these rigid non-negotiables deeply anchor your chaotic day. They constantly prove to your own subconscious mind that you are a serious man of your exact word. If you cannot even keep a simple, tiny promise to yourself, how can you ever expect the brutal world to trust you with massive success? It all starts with the foundational, critical morning routine. The uncompromising 4 a.m. wake-up call. I am absolutely not telling you to do this just to torture yourself for no apparent reason. I am telling you this because there is a distinct, undeniable magic hidden securely in the silent early hours before the rest of the lazy world finally wakes up. When you physically force yourself out of a warm, comfortable bed at 4, you immediately win the hardest fight of the entire day. While your unseen competition is snoring loudly, trapped deeply in their comfortable dreams, you have already secured the first massive victory of the day. You have successfully defeated the insidious creeping weakness hiding inside your own mind. When that loud, obnoxious alarm goes off in the pitch black, it is not just a clock, it is a brutal daily test of your core character. Do not ever hit the snooze button. Hitting snooze is intentionally starting your brand new day with a broken promise to yourself. You are literally telling your brain that your temporary physical comfort is vastly more important than your ultimate life goals. You get up immediately without a second thought. You drink cold water. You forcefully move your body to violently wake up the nervous system. You sit down and read something incredibly difficult. You meticulously plan the day's aggressive attack. You essentially create an impenetrable armor of mental discipline before the sun even manages to breach the eastern horizon. You begin to operate in a ruthless 90-day sprint system. You do not look at the whole overwhelming year. That is far too much for the human mind to process effectively. You look exclusively at the next 90 days. You set a definitive, highly aggressive target, and you build a daily checklist that practically guarantees you hit it. You execute that exact daily checklist with absolutely zero emotion. You do not pause to ask yourself if your music happen to feel like doing it on any given Tuesday morning. You just execute the required action like a relentless machine. But here's the dangerous trap that destroys most capable men during these critical 90-day sprints. They execute perfectly for exactly 14 days, and then they angrily look at their bank account or look in the mirror expecting to see a miraculous, life-altering transformation. When they do not see massive, immediate results, they throw their hands up in the air and loudly declare that the system is completely broken. That right there is a fatal lack of strategic patience. You have been building terrible, destructive habits for 10, 20, or maybe 30 long years of your entire life. Do you honestly believe deep down in your soul that a mere 2 weeks of half-dent effort is going to instantly erase decades of comfortable mediocrity? That is arrogant delusion. You need to entirely rewire your brain to fall deeply in love with delayed gratification. You must completely embrace the fact that the heavy seeds you are violently planting in the dirt today are not going to yield a harvest tomorrow morning. Let me explain a profound ancient principle that you absolutely must engrave onto your heart if you want to survive the brutal journey ahead. I call it the law of the inevitable seasons. Nature has a very specific, undeniable rhythm, and your personal development follows the exact same unbreakable rules. Every incredibly successful man you have ever looked up to has had to survive a bitter, agonizing winter. The winter season of your life is when the ground is frozen, completely solid. The skies are dark, the bitter wind is howling, and absolutely nothing appears to be growing on the surface. During the winter, all of the critical growth is happening deep underground, completely invisible to the naked eye. Most weak men absolutely panic during the winter. They start frantically digging up the fragile seeds they just planted to see if they are growing yet. And in doing so, they completely destroy any chance of future life. You must possess the quiet, unshakable confidence to leave the seed in the freezing dark. You must protect it. You must quietly water it. And you must trust the cold process. You cannot forcefully rush the spring. You can only fiercely prepare yourself for it while the snow continues to fall heavily around you. Stop and think about this deeply for a second. We currently live in a toxic, hyper-connected society that worships instant gratification like a false god. You can press a glowing button on your phone and have a hot meal delivered right to your front door in 20 short minutes. You can swipe your thumb and instantly watch endless hours of mindless entertainment. That extreme level of immediate comfort has deeply corrupted your fundamental understanding of how true lasting value is actually created in this harsh world. True power, the kind of undeniable power that commands immense respect in any womb you enter, is never built quickly. It is forged strictly through the intentional delay of pleasure. Ask yourself honestly right now, are you willing to sacrifice every single Friday night out with your broke, complaining friends for the next 5 years? Are you actually willing to drive an old, beaten up car while your peers finance luxury vehicles they absolutely cannot afford, just so you can quietly invest your hard-earned capital into your own business? If you hesitate to answer that question, you are not truly ready for the heavy burden of success. Delayed gratification is the ultimate, undeniable separator of the boys from the hardened men. I need to give you a very clear, highly realistic timeline. So you completely stop lying to yourself about how long this is going to take. Write this down in your mind and never forget it. It takes exactly 3 grueling months to build a solid, unbreakable foundation. During these first 90 days, you're going to feel completely exhausted. Your body will ache, your mind will aggressively rebel, and your old toxic friends will constantly mock your new strict discipline. You will see absolutely zero tangible external results during this initial phase. None. Your bank account will look exactly the same, and the mirror will show you the exact same out-of-shaped man. But internally, on a deep cellular level, you are violently shifting. You are quietly proving to yourself that you actually have the rare capacity to suffer for a worthy cause. You are building the heavy mental armor you are going to desperately need when the real enemy attacks. Those 3 months are not about achieving the final victory. They are exclusively about earning the absolute right to step onto the real battlefield. If you quit during this phase, you are choosing to remain a permanent civilian in the war for your own potential. Once you survive that initial brutal phase, you enter the 6-month mark of the timeline. This is exactly where the quiet, invisible momentum finally starts to manifest in the physical world. This is when the heavy ice begins to slowly crack. At 6 months of unbroken, relentless daily discipline, you will start to see the undeniable visible changes. Your clothes will fit differently. Your posture will naturally command more space in a crowded room. You will speak with a calm, heavy resonance because your words are finally backed by actual, undeniable actions. And here is where it gets incredibly interesting. People around you will slowly start to notice the shift, but they will not understand it. They will quietly ask you if you are feeling okay, or they will make passive aggressive comments about how you never seem to have fun anymore. Let me tell you a secret about human nature. Your sudden aggressive progress acts as a giant blinding mirror that forcefully reflects their own laziness right back into their eyes. They do not hate you. They hate the painful realization that they have been making useless excuses while you have been silently executing. During this 6-month phase, you must remain absolutely silent. Do not argue with them. Do not try to eagerly explain your complex vision. Just let the undeniable results speak loudly for you. When you finally cross the massive 12-month threshold, a complete violent transformation has fully occurred. The old weak version of you is entirely dead and buried. You literally cannot even relate to the man you were exactly 1 year ago. The terrible habits that used to desperately tempt you now actually disgust you. Waking up at 4 in the morning is no longer a brutal daily fight. It is simply who you are. Going to the gym when you feel tired is no longer a massive internal debate. It is an automatic involuntary reflex. You have completely shifted from consciously forcing discipline to subconsciously embodying it. This 12-month mark is exactly where the vast majority of your lazy competition has completely fallen off the radar. They quit during the winter. They surrendered when it got slightly uncomfortable. But you kept quietly swinging the heavy hammer in the dark. One day, you will look back at this exact moment in time. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. You will look back at the precise moment you decided to draw a hard line in the sand and refuse to cross it ever again. But getting to that 12-month mark requires something far more complex than music, just blind, stubborn effort. It requires a sophisticated internal guidance system. Music, let us pivot aggressively and talk about the critical necessity of harsh, unfiltered feedback. Blind discipline without accurate measurement is just a fantastic way to run extremely fast in the complete wrong direction. You can wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sweat for 5 hours, and read a dozen books a week. But if you are aiming at the wrong target, you are just wasting your precious life. This is where you must actively engage in the brutal protocol of honest self-assessment. I call this the mirror test, and it is the single most terrifying thing a modern man can subject himself to. At the end of every single month, you need to strip away all of your clever rationalizations, all of your impressive sounding, busy work, and stare deeply into the metaphorical mirror. You have to ask yourself the incredibly painful questions that nobody else has the courage to ask you. Did I actually move the heavy needle forward this month, or did I just expertly pretend to be productive? Did I shy away from the hard, uncomfortable conversations because I was secretly a coward? Did I allow my fragile ego to completely sabotage a valuable relationship? You cannot possibly fix a massive leak in your boat if you stubbornly refuse to acknowledge that there is water rapidly pouring over your feet. The mirror test requires you to entirely detach your fragile ego from your actual performance. Your ego is a dangerous lying enemy that constantly tries to protect you from the sharp sting of reality. It tells you that your massive failures were actually someone else's fault. It loudly whispers that the unfair market conditions caused your business to fail, or that your boss's unreasonable bias is the only reason you didn't get that promotion. Listen to me carefully. As long as you point the finger outward, you surrender all of your personal power to completely change the situation. Extreme heavy ownership is the only path forward. When things go terribly wrong, and they absolutely will go wrong, you must instantly absorb the blame. You stand tall. You take the heavy hit right on the chin, and you say out loud, "This is my fault, and I will fix it immediately." That shocking level of radical accountability is extremely rare in this modern decade. It commands instant, silent respect from every other serious man in the room. When you master the mirror test, you transition from being a helpless, complaining victim of circumstance to the undeniable, powerful architect of your own destiny. You use your painful failures as precise coordinates to map out your next aggressive attack. This harsh feedback loop directly fuels your critical course correction protocol. When the mirror test boldly reveals that your current strategy is completely failing, you do not stubbornly dig your heels in and pray for a sudden miracle. You immediately pivot with cold, calculated precision. There is a massive fundamental difference between strategically quitting a terrible plan and cowardly quitting on your ultimate goal. The weak man abandons his high goal entirely the moment his initial plan encounters heavy resistance. The unstoppable man keeps the high goal absolutely locked in his mind, but he is completely willing to ruthlessly slaughter his original plan if the raw data proves it is utterly useless. You must become a clinical scientist in the laboratory of your own life. You carefully design a specific hypothesis. You run the physical experiment through aggressive daily action, and you coldly analyze the hard results without a single drop of destructive emotion. If the difficult experiment fails, you do not sit in the dark corner and cry about your ruined life. You simply adjust the complex variables and run the damn experiment again the very next morning, again and again and again, until the heavy door finally breaks off its metal hinges. You desperately need to establish rigid, unemotional tracking systems for everything that actually matters in your life. You cannot manage what you refuse to accurately measure. If your ultimate goal is to build massive wealth, you must know exactly where every single penny is going down to the absolute cent. If your goal is to build an elite, dangerous physique, you must brutally track every heavy set, every single repetition, and every calorie you put into your mouth. This level of extreme tracking is incredibly tedious. It is boring. It is the exact opposite of flashy and exciting. But wait until you hear this next part, because this is the absolute secret to achieving the impossible. The profound, undeniable magic of long-term success is almost exclusively found in the exact daily tasks you currently avoid, because they are incredibly boring. The 1% do not possess some magical ancient secret that you do not know. They simply possess the uncommon, brutal endurance to do the boring, tedious, repetitive work long after the 99% have completely lost interest and wandered off to find a shiny new distraction. You must fall deeply in love with the unglamorous, boring numbers. The numbers will never lie to you the way your fragile emotions constantly do. Now pay close attention to this, because understanding this specific mechanic will completely alter the trajectory of your entire life. Once you have the quiet discipline, the strategic patience, and the brutal feedback systems firmly in place, you actively trigger the most powerful force in the human universe. I am talking about the massive, undeniable phenomenon of momentum and aggressive compounding. You need to vividly imagine a massive heavy iron flywheel resting silently on a concrete floor. It weighs 5,000 pounds. You step up to it and push with absolutely everything you have in your lungs. You strain, you sweat. Your muscles scream in pure agony, and the massive wheel moves exactly 1 single millimeter. It feels completely impossible. It feels entirely useless. The average weak man gives up right there and violently curses the heavy wheel. But you are not average. You step up the very next day and push it again. It moves 1 more millimeter. You push it for 30 days straight, and it finally completes one painfully slow revolution. You are exhausted, but you do not stop pushing. You keep aggressively driving your shoulder into that cold, heavy iron every single morning before the sun comes up. Suddenly, something completely microscopic shifts in the deep physics of the heavy wheel. The massive dead weight of the iron actually starts to work in your favor. By the 3rd month, the wheel is completing a full revolution every single week. By the 6th month, it is spinning entirely on its own, generating a massive, terrifying amount of kinetic energy. By the 12th month, that heavy iron flywheel is spinning so incredibly fast that absolutely nothing on earth can stop it without being violently crushed into 1 million tiny pieces. That heavy wheel is your life. That is your business, your physical health, your unshakable mindset. The incredibly painful early days when you are sweating and grinding for a microscopic millimeter of progress are the exact days that permanently break the weak and fully forge the strong. You are building the critical foundational momentum that will eventually make your massive success look completely effortless to the lazy outside world. When they finally see the wheel spinning at blinding speed, they will loudly claim you are an overnight success. They will completely ignore the thousands of agonizing pushes in the freezing dark. Let them believe the convenient lie. You know exactly what it cost you in the shadows. Do you know the exact mathematics of this daily momentum? If you improve yourself by just 1% every day, you do not just get 36% better by the end of the year. Due to the violent exponential nature of the compound effect, you actually become nearly 38 times better than the exact man you were on day one. Let that aggressive mathematics sink deeply into your soul. 1 to the power of 365 equals 37.78. That is not motivational poetry. That is cold, irrefutable math. But here is the brutal, terrifying flip side of that exact same coin. If you actively choose to decline by just 1% every day through tiny, lazy choices, skipping the gym, eating garbage, scrolling mindlessly, you mathematically approach absolute zero by the end of that same year. You do not just stay the same in this relentless, aggressively moving universe. Staying entirely stagnant is a physical impossibility. You are either actively fighting to climb the steep mountain, or you are quietly sliding down into the dark abyss. There is absolutely no safe, comfortable plateau where you can just pitch a tent and relax. Every single day, you are casting a definitive, heavy vote for your future self. Which exact direction is the heavy wheel spinning today? You will inevitably hit massive, deeply frustrating plateaus along this journey. The heavy wheel will suddenly feel like it is completely stuck in thick, wet mud, despite your maximum daily effort. This is exactly where the vast majority of highly disciplined men ultimately lose their minds and violently quit. They mistake a necessary period of internal consolidation for a permanent fatal failure. When you hit a massive plateau, your immediate primitive instinct will be to violently change everything at once. You will want to tear up the entire blueprint, fire everyone, and start completely over from scratch. Do not do it. Stop and carefully think about this. A plateau is not a sign that your strict system is broken. It is usually a sign that your system is successfully preparing to aggressively level up. It is the necessary quiet before the massive thunderstorm. During a frustrating plateau, you do not need a completely new, shiny strategy. You usually just need to strictly execute the exact same boring strategy with 10 times the aggressive intensity and flawless microscopic precision. You tighten the heavy bolts. You aggressively trim the unnecessary fat from your daily schedule. You push harder into the dark discomfort. Breakthroughs always hide stubbornly right behind the most agonizing periods of stagnant frustration. You must learn to recognize the subtle microscopic signs that momentum is finally building in your favor. It never announces its arrival with loud trumpets or a grand parade. It creeps in silently like a slow rising tide in the middle of the night. You will suddenly notice that the heavy weights in the gym feel slightly lighter in your callous hands. The complex problems at work that used to give you debilitating panic attacks now feel like simple, elementary puzzles waiting to be effortlessly solved. The toxic people who used to constantly trigger your anger no longer even register on your emotional radar. This is the precise moment music when your deep invisible roots have finally taken a firm hold in the solid bedrock. But there is something nobody tells you about this exact transition. This is also the most dangerous period of the entire journey. Your primitive subconscious mind is absolutely terrified of this new elevated altitude. It is deeply conditioned to survive strictly in the familiar mud. It will actively try to sabotage your massive progress because it secretly prefers the predictable misery of the old you over the terrifying unknown potential of the new you. Listen to me carefully, because you will face this insidious enemy very soon. Self-sabotage is the silent assassin of massive potential. Just when the heavy iron flywheel is finally spinning at a blinding speed, you will suddenly feel an overwhelming, irrational urge to skip a critical workout, to drink that cheap alcohol, to send a pathetic text message to a toxic person from your past. Your mind will smoothly try to convince you that you have worked incredibly hard and you finally deserve a small, harmless break. That is a vicious, calculated lie. That is your old, dying identity.